Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second Awareness Month event. In October, we're celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and our title of our program is Building Bridges, Inclusion and Accessibility in Every Space. And I am pleased to welcome Vaughn Harris, who has agreed to join us and spend some time with us, sharing his personal story and his expertise in this space, but also more broadly in the DEI space. And Vaughn, I'm going to read your bio, although I know it's always really unnerving to hear people read about you. So just awkwardly smile as I read all this stuff about you. Um, okay. So Vaughn Harris is the DEI Specialist and Senior Operations Manager at TBWA Advertising Agency in New York City, bringing 16 years of invaluable experience in the ad industry. His commitment to pushing boundary and reshaping the future of advertising makes him a true trailblazer. Here's why. Vaughn exemplifies the essence of change management, dedicating himself fervently to capitalizing positive transformations within various environments. His unwavering commitment to championing the rights of marginalized communities, including and particularly in individuals with disabilities, illuminates his profound impact as an advocate and facilitator of change. From the onset of his journey in 2016, when he returned to TBWA, Vaughn has ceaselessly endeavored to dismantle barriers and foster inclusivity. He seamlessly transitioned from project management to managing the agency's design studio, DXD, then moving into operations. As an operations manager, Vaughn was a key part of building the culture within the agency and worked closely with the production of the Disruptor series. He played a pivotal role as one of the co-leads of OmniCon, who's your parent company's Open Disability ERG, Employee Resource Group, underscoring his dedication to amplifying the voices of individuals facing adversity. Notably, he moderated a groundbreaking panel on the intersection of accessibility between racism and ableism at an Ad Color conference, sparking insightful discourse and fostering collective enlightenment. I hear Ad Color, those conferences, by the way, I hear they're amazing.
Always.
Yeah, in 2022, Vaughn assumed the mantle of DEI Specialist at TBWA New York, assuming responsibility for nurturing a vibrant culture of belonging and inclusivity within the agency's employee resource group. He's also the lead of Black Slash, which is the employee resource group. His leadership extends beyond organizational boundaries, as evidenced by his proactive engagement as a guest on numerous podcasts. Through these platforms, he elevates crucial conversations on ableism, accessibility, and burnout, igniting consciousness and fostering awareness. Vaughn's impact extends into this structural fabric of advocacy as he assumes a pivotal role as the founding member of Profound, which he'll tell us more about, a professional network dedicating to amplifying the disability leadership. Embodying his ethos of inclusivity and equity, Vaughn serves as a judge for the One Show 2024 Fusion Pencil, celebrating diversity in advertising agencies and in the content of creative endeavors. Central to Vaughn's advocacy is an unwavering belief in the power of giving back and uplifting others, which is very much in line with our own mission here. His journey serves as a testimony of the transformational potential of empathy and activism. By leveraging his lived experience as a foundation, Vaughn not only advocates for accessibility and inclusivity, but he empowers others to do the same. And I'm going to just take a moment of personal privilege here, because when my team and I got together not so long after we started, and we talked about what we wanted our HR mission to be, one of the things that what we created as our vision is that we want to create an environment where our employees feel fulfilled and empowered. And whatever I try to do, whatever we roll out, I try to do it with that lens. And so to hear that as your closing lines of your bio, kind of speaks to my soul.
Yes.
So thank you for being here. The Mutual of America community I don't know if they know this, but everyone who comes here gives of their time freely, literally and figuratively, to share their story with us in a way that I hope just helps each other to think differently about each other, and to not only honor our differences, but also honor our similarities. And so I appreciate that you've taken time out of your working day to spend with us. So thank you.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
you're welcome. So let's get started. I always like to know a little bit about our guest speakers. So I just read who you were, but like, who are you really? And
Yeah.
what led you to become such a passionate advocate for underrepresented communities, and in particular those with disabilities?
Um, and once again, thank you, Tara, for inviting me and Anita and everybody in the team. I've um I've always felt like I had to contribute and had to give back throughout my entire career. There's always been somebody who mentored me, who elevated me, who supported me, and was a voice for me and an advocate for me when I wasn't in the room. So I take that as an obligation now to do that for other people. And sure, I'm centering a lot of it on people with disabilities, but I also think that it works in all intersections in all groups because I think we're so much more alike than we are different, as our hopefully future president will say. So I think that we need to lean in on that more and really try to be there to uplift and encourage each other. No matter where you come from, no matter what your walk of life, your race, your ethnicity, your culture, we all need to come together. So I feel like that's my personal mission. And so for me, as a person who grew up with a disability and trying to navigate the space, of just living life and finding accessibility. And I grew up in the South, so it wasn't always is easy in certain environments there to, there wasn't always ramps when I was growing up. And so, you
So
just
Vaughn,
have
I'll
to,
actually say, because I don't know if people can tell, but you are a person who is assisted by a wheelchair. So
yes, I'm
just, you're
sitting in one
talking
right
about
now.
ramps, but you're sitting one now. So yeah, so I just
Yep,
want to, so when you say
yep,
ramps, I just want to give people context because they may not even realize that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, just a level set on that, it was all about, just trying to make it work. And my parents were a guiding force in my life. They always encouraged in me that I could do anything, I could be anything I wanted to do, not to let my disability hinder me from jumping into life full throttle. So I've always done that. And my father always told me to never be afraid to be the first one or the only one. And in many of the spaces, I'm the only person with a disability in the room.
Hmm.
So I've learned
Maybe a
that I
known
needed to,
disability though, right?
right,
Maybe, right. Yeah.
right, that I could see,
A visible disability,
right, a
right?
visible disability that I could see. So, it's just been important for me to use my voice to elevate the voices of others. And that's why I'm doing what I do today.
Yes. Tell me if I can't ask, but or just stop me if I can't ask. But have you always been aided by a wheelchair, or was that at some point later in your life? Or
That came a little later. I was born with a rare form of cerebral palsy, which only affected my legs, and it was all about muscle weakness and tightening that is caused by the cerebral palsy. And so I used to walk on my toes like a ballerina, and my parents, thought they were doing the right thing and were trying to fix that as I was a kid, and they thought they were doing it right, but of course the technology wasn't as good as it could have been, and so I ended up using walkers and canes and crutches and then ultimately wheelchairs as, life got a little more hectic and schools required more movement. So I started using a wheelchair and I've used a wheelchair now for 40 years, and it seems like yesterday, but it's been a long time.
yeah, yeah. And I say that because I think, we'll talk a little later about what life is, but I think, you when we were talking earlier, you gave the example of, having to open a door or,
Yeah,
I mean, I think about all of us, at least in New York City, up and down subway stairs
yeah,
and I think we bring light to what you may not even someone who does not need additional aid doesn't even think about, right? We take
right.
for granted. But I know we'll get into that later when we talk about technology. But
Sure.
I always say start with data because I love data. So I'm going to talk a little bit about data, and then let's talk a little bit about it on the other side. So
Okay.
The U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policies theme for this month is access to good jobs for all, emphasizing their goal to invest and create opportunities for disabled workers disabled workers actually in good jobs. So
Yes.
I want to pause with that. Good jobs across the company. Statistics show that people with disability are underrepresented in the workforce with lower employment rates compared to those with disabilities. People with disabilities are about 22.5% of the working population, while people without disabilities is about 65% of the population. But you talked about when we did our prep call, you talked about how working has always been a part of your life. It sounds like that's much of what you just said about your father and
Right.
how what he used to say about you. So what's your view on employment for people with disabilities? What barriers still exist? How do we work to break them down? Candidly, like I look around here and we don't really have many people with a known, I'm acknowledging that they're probably unseen and invisible disabilities, but we don't have many people who are like you here.
Right. Right.
Not that you can tell me the answer for that all, but
Yeah.
why is that? And what's the research telling you as to why that doesn't happen?
Well, unfortunately, I think it has a lot to do with bias against people with disabilities, especially physical disabilities, because it's something that you can see coming in the gate. There's no way you can not disclose. And a lot of times we have, unconscious bias around it based on culture, religion, society, and how people have deemed people with disabilities. Less than, weaker, not able to do. But there are so many talented, professional, qualified candidates. And unfortunately, these numbers is what really drew me into this conversation. Because, as I said, I've always worked. So I've never had that experience. I have several college degrees. I've had great corporate jobs throughout my career. And, I've done different kinds of things. I went from corporate to film and then back into corporate. So I've never seen that barrier happen to me. But once again, I also say, I've always had a situation where there was always a mentor or somebody who advocated for me. So maybe that's where that all came into play. But I just would apply for a job, and if I qualified for it, I would get it. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen for everyone. And I think that and the hiring practices need to change and how people interview with people with disabilities. Sometimes it might not be the phone interview, or it might be like some kind of video call. There's technology now that can change things. So some people don't do as well on a phone interview, than others. And so sometimes it needs to be in person. Sometimes for certain people with neurodivergent situations, they may need an agenda so they can prepare themselves to know what's coming forward for them in the interview process. So it's really about changing the mindset of companies and corporations in their hiring practices and their interview practices.
Yeah, I mean, I have a good friend who left his job and he is starting a foundation I should connect you to. I'll remember that afterwards. He had a son who is autistic
Right.
and he is doing a lot of work with colleges on neurodivergence
Yes.
learning and probably more important than learning or equally as important than learning is job placement.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering, do you have you had an experience where you saw someone's eyes, you came and someone's eyes, kind of looked away or
Oh,
like
yes.
what tell me if you have one that's a visceral memory and like what does that feel like when someone sees you but then they don't see you or they don't really know how
Right.
to see you or
Right. Well, I mean, for a long time, I was an outside sales rep. Before I moved into advertising agency work, I was an outside sales rep for the newspaper in Columbia, South Carolina. And I was actually going to clients' offices and, going over ads with them and displays and whatnot. But literally, when I would enter the room, they would be shocked because, for my basic phone call conversation, they didn't have any idea. So when I rolled into the room, now all of a sudden they have to.
literally roll into the room.
Right. They have to process seeing me in the wheelchair, and then they have to deal with that dynamic. A lot of them will automatically want to help and assist and grab the door and do all these things, and then others are they'll want to ask a question like, what happened to you? Like, I don't know why people think they need to know that,
Mhm.
but what's your backstory? How did you end up in this
Of course,
wheelchair?
I just asked you that. So
And that's fine for the purpose of this conversation.
right,
You're supposed to. So, and I respect that 1000% because it helps to educate people because I'm not afraid to talk about my disability. I have it. There's
Mhm.
nothing I can do around it. And so, um, it takes them back for a minute, and then I have to show who I am and what I'm here to do. You know, Ignore the wheelchair, just see me as a person and stop seeing the object that I'm riding in as
Mm.
the determining factor.
Hmm. So, not a disabled person, but a person who has a disability, and there's
Right,
a difference, right? And
right.
how you think about
Right, and
the
we're
way that
in
you
the
describe that.
conversation around disability. We're shifting the conversation to person first,
Yes.
then the disability.
Yeah. And by the way, I in so many ways I try to take that on. We do put labels on people, and I'm really really conscious of that
Right,
lately. In the conversation, in my own mind, in my example of someone's not a homeless person, they're a
right.
person without a home.
Yes,
And there's a person there, or even, the how you describe someone who was a slave. No, it wasn't
right.
a person wasn't a slave. They were an enslaved person. In the same way that you're not disabled person, you're a person with a disability. the,
Yes.
the person comes first, which
Hmm.
is why I love conversations like this, because it's not anything wrong with us. It's the way that we've been grown up, and
Right.
now, but when you know better, you do better, right? So you stop to
Absolutely.
think first, right? And that's why I love these kinds of conversations.
Yes.
So, according to this here paper I have in my hand, you were a profound gold ambassador. You
Yes.
received the Profound Gold Ambassador Award for 2024,
Yeah.
because of the work that you've done with Profound. So tell us a little bit about, and actually, on your website, it's not an organization, it's a community. So tell
Right.
us about the Profound community. What is that? And tell us some of the research or trends that Profound is putting forth, about helping to transform the employment workplace for people who have disabilities. Tell us about that, and congratulations again.
Well, thank you very much. It was an honor for me to be awarded with the Gold Ambassador Award because since I found out about Profound. And what Profound is a group or a community of us from all different aspects of life and careers. And we're all thought leaders, influencers, and professionals that work in the disability inclusion space. So some of us actually have physical and neurodivergent disabilities, and then there are others who are allies because you
Mm.
need you need allies also. We can't always be the ones in the battle. We need help in making some of these things happen. And a lot of times we're not sitting at those boardroom tables, right? So we need somebody who is there to advocate for us as people with disabilities. And sure, the people in this group, many of them are, CEOs, presidents, they own their own businesses. There's a lot of entrepreneurship there. There's a lot of, major corporations involved. I represent the advertising and marketing sector within the group. And, we travel around the country. We have summits around the country so that we can meet people where they are and where they live in their own particular environments. And the group is growing by leaps and bounds because we've gone from being, a United States organization to now being global because we have members in Canada. And we're going to be branching off into the UK. So I feel like it's important for us to come together. And there's never been a group like this before where
Mhm.
they've reached out to professionals in all industries talking about disability inclusion. And we're also about educating people on these hiring practices and making things possible, talking to people about accommodation and accessibility for the employees that you do have, and making sure that, okay, and see what people don't understand, disability is the one intersectionality that can affect all groups. No matter what group you fall in, disability can affect any of us in 1 second. All it takes is one
Yeah.
second, one accident can change your life forever. We have an aging population. We're all going to be dealing with what it's like to get older and have particular ailments that develop over time. So this is one group that's always going to be there.
Yeah, and it's actually, I don't remember if we said this when we were doing the prep call or where, but and it's probably the one group that many of us will join at some
Yes,
point, really.
everybody
Yeah.
on this call, you know, it's always going to happen. Because I think about, my mom now, and she's, bless her heart, she's 97 years old. And
Mm.
she went from very, very physically active and very vibrant to being bedbound at
Mm.
97. And if you'd have told this woman that this was where she was going to be, as a longtime educator and all of this and very active, if you'd have told her she was going to end up being bedbound like this and using wheelchairs and canes as she got older. And I'll never forget how vain she was
Mine too.
about
My
using a
mother too.
wheelchair. And I was like,
Didn't
how,
use the walker.
right, you watch me have a disability my entire life,
Right.
but you don't want to use your walker and you don't want to use your cane or you don't want to use a wheelchair. So I'm also about, part of my mission is also, and Profounds too, about changing the narrative around disability and the representation and what we look like to people. And as a person in advertising and film, my mission is about representation. There's no reason why you shouldn't see us incorporated in all these stories that you're watching. Whether it be a television commercial or a TV show or a film.
So what are the things that are on top of mind for Profound? Is there any particular research or trends that you all are ruminating over right now?
What we're doing right now, because once again we're in the very early stages of this group. Just
Hmm.
think of it as a startup basically,
Okay.
and we're within a year and a half. So we're building foundations, and now we're doing fundraising and increasing membership across all aspects of disability. First of all, so whether it be neurodivergent, whether it be blindness, deafness, hard of hearing, because there's deafness and hard of hearing. There's two different distinctions. Then you
Hmm.
have, all the other mobility type of disabilities. So we're really trying to reach out to as many people as possible to make everyone a part of the conversation. And
Hmm.
then the mission is about getting us in those right positions to make change, whether it be in education, in hiring, in all these different companies. So it's about changing the perception and being in the room and being a voice. And we also reach out to caregivers because we have a lot of parents who are taking care of their disabled child or a disabled person, a parent, or something like that, to make sure that the changes in technology and the changes in the conversation are hitting everybody.
Well, I look forward to where the group goes, and please stay in touch with us as you
Oh,
feel
I will
like
let you know.
maybe next year, a year from now, you'll come back and you'll tell us all about the big grant that you all received and the big
Right.
turnout that
Or
you
we
know.
can invite you, or we can invite your company to some of our sessions, because we bring in corporations to all of our summits. We bring in people from the different communities and talking about what their businesses are doing to benefit people with disabilities. So
Okay,
this is a
well,
great time to have those kinds of conversations.
sounds like we're staying in touch with each other. Um,
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the work that you do at TBWA Chiat Day.
Okay.
So I mentioned in your opening that you are a part of ERGs, and you told us that there are 8 ERGs at Chiat Day.
Right.
I feel like I'll caveat that for here to say it is one of the things that we're looking to get up and running here. I'm hoping I would actually love, so for all those who are hearing, if there's an interest, a groundswell of an ERG, Employee Resource Group, if there's interest in them, please let me and Tish know. It takes time to get them up and running. We'll talk about this, but I do feel like the ERGs establish a community, and I think that people are bound to companies by community. So that's my ask for those who are listening, that if there are areas of interest, please let us know. But tell us about, I think you have one for individuals with disabilities. Tell us a little bit about what are some of the takeaways that you get from those meetings, and I would love, maybe it's the business case, but how can the creation of ERGs inspire managers and employees to advocate for themselves, which I'm also really huge about, is building advocacy in the culture. So tell us a little bit about the ERGs that you have there.
Okay. So first of all, My individual agency, TBWA Chiat Day, does not have an ERG for people with disabilities yet. What
Okay.
we've done is our um, parent company, Omnicom,
Hmm.
has an ERG for people with disabilities. It's called Open Disability. And
Okay.
all of them are open something. So it's Open Pride, Omni Women, all the different things, right? So
Hmm.
with Open Disability, we we've been able to galvanize all the people with disabilities within the Omnicom network. So that's all of our ad agencies, all the marketing groups, all the PR agencies under that umbrella. And it's over 650 people. And who knew? Because I'm sitting in my office in New York thinking I'm the only one. I have nobody, I don't have a peer or, a mentor in the space. But yes, we get on a Zoom call just like I'm on a call with you guys today, and I'm in a room full of 600 odd people.
Mm.
So it was mind blowing. And like I said, we have groups that represent all groups within the network. Now, as far as what TBWA does here in New York, we have ERGs, and we're about belonging, right? And encouraging the space of belonging and encouraging people to come together and share time with your affinity group, just so you have support. You have somebody that looks like you, that is like you within the space. So we have
Yeah.
seasoned professionals, we have our women's group, we have Black Slash, which is the Black ERG, we have health and wellness, which I funnel a lot of disability conversation within the health and wellness group, because
Mhm.
then we'll bring in speakers, we bring in classes around meditation and relaxation, and because when you have because we do have a lot of people with neurodivergence within the office. Some of them have disclosed and some of them have not, but we lean in heavily on mindfulness and what it will take for you to better do your job. Do you need particular accommodation? Do you need agendas before the meeting so you know how to prepare yourself for the meeting? Do you need extra time to work on your presentations just so that you're prepared? Because some people are dyslexic and they need more time to prepare. So we want to foster this kind of learning education within the space
Mhm.
as far as the health and wellness group goes as it relates to disability. So that, because I felt like that was a way in without the group centering around me, since I was
Mhm.
the only one with a physical disability in the office.
Mhm.
So I said, well, how can we lean in it and talk about the topic without it being centered and focused around me? And then
Yes. Yeah.
we have our Jewish population. We also have our AAPI group. We just celebrated Latin Heritage Month with our Latin A group. We have a very strong LGBTQIA plus group. We have all kinds of events. So all these groups coming together, we're not only influencing the culture of the agency, but we also influence the work. If there's a group or a brand that's wanting to lean in on a particular topic or a particular demographic, they come to us for insights to make sure they're not making missteps like you've seen with Heinz recently. Or
Oh wait, I don't know about Heinz. What's some of the
Heinz
Heinz? What
Heinz
they
has
do?
a horrible campaign where there's somebody with these red lips, like they just had a hamburger. It's a black person who just had a hamburger or something, and their lips are red, like those old what do they
Uh-huh.
call them? Minstrel
Yeah.
things from back in the day. Big lips, that whole scenario, and then one of the what is it? Bath and Body. They
Yeah, I
just had
saw
to sit
that.
right with the candles
Yeah, I
and
saw
the
that.
KKK imagery,
KKK. Oh,
which
that's so
right. And see, these kinds of conversations, these things shouldn't happen. But if there's nobody sitting at the table when these decisions are made,
yes.
nobody's to say, "Oh, that's culturally offensive," or "This is inappropriate." If there's nobody to say that in the room, how are these things going to? They'll just go out there.
Well, let me agree and disagree with you at the same time.
Mhm.
It actually doesn't matter if they're in the room if
Right.
they're not empowered
Yes.
and given agency to say something. Because
Yes.
if they're sitting in the room while stuff happens and they're not comfortable, then that's more awkward. But if they're
Yes.
sitting in the room and have agency and have the ability to advocate, and also, by the way, not just that person, like anyone, if you create an environment where anyone can say, wait a second now, this doesn't feel right.
Absolutely.
And to
I
your
think
point, sometimes you need allies. The allies can sometimes say it stronger than the person in the group, right?
Yes, and advocacy is the main thing, and I think that's what ERGs really lean into well because it supports that kind of advocacy and agency that you can stand up for yourself because you don't feel like you're alone in a
Yeah,
situation. And everybody might not agree with you, but you at least need to stand your ground and stand on principle and say this is not appropriate if you
yeah.
run into those situations. So that's another reason why you know ERGs or affinity groups or whatever your company wants to call them. Sometimes people don't want to lean into certain terms, but
Mhm.
whatever it takes to make your groups happy and feel like they belong and feel like they can share. And it's not about being performative and putting on shows for your other employees. It's about sharing a part of your culture, your affinity, what makes you different with everybody at your company.
Because I believe I would probably be a member of the seasoned employee group, although I'm hiding it and won't really admit. But do you know what they talk about in the seasoned employee group?
Well, I'm a member of that one too, and I have to.
Don't let the gray hair fool you. I thought maybe you just did that for style.
It's a style thing. I'm in the Silver Fox crew right now, but I say all that to say what we do in the seasoned professional group, we pair a lot of times with the young professional group to give them mentorship and guidance as how to move through their career path. Because we've been here and we've done it, and we've reached certain levels,
Nothing's
but
new.
we want to reach back and share. And a lot of times we come together literally just to talk, just to decompress, to talk about home life. We've talked about everything from some of our members, going through menopause and having empty nest syndrome because their kids are gone off to college, or taking care of an elderly parent or a sick spouse. So it's not just always about work. Sometimes it's about just coming together with common interests and concerns. And that's
Yeah,
how we share in that
yeah,
space. It's a beautiful thing because it's the only time we get to really talk to each other like that because we're usually just kind of working all the time
yeah.
and, head down doing what you do. But it's a great space for us. And we're just there to show support for each other as older members in an office full of 24-year-olds.
Especially in advertising, I'm
Yes.
sure. Yes,
Yes.
they get younger by the year. So I'm going to pause for a second. I don't see any questions. I also didn't remind people that they could ask questions, which could be why I don't see any. Um, Anita, I'm going to invite you on to join us for a second, and we'll ping for a few seconds and see. We can banter for a few seconds, see if we get some questions once Anita joins. And if we don't get any more questions, if we don't get any questions, then I will finish with the other ones that we have prepared. But
Sure.
so Anita, thank you for joining, and thank you, Anita, for this introduction to Vaughn for us. Our speakers are always found through our own internal networks and relationships. I'll also give a plug that if there are people out there who think you have someone who has something interesting to say, please let us know because we literally just kind of search our network, our Rolodex, so to speak, as a
Yeah.
senior seasoned person would say, to see who we know. Um, so we'll give it a few seconds to see if we see any questions or comments, and if not, we'll keep going.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Tara, and thank you so much, Vaughn, for agreeing to participate. So, again, we're eternally grateful. We encourage everyone, as Tara said, to ask any questions in the Q&A. As of right now, I don't see any. But again, you do have some time if you want to add something in.
Yes. And there are no uncomfortable questions, so feel free.
Up, we have one who's just come in, so thank you so much. So the quote paraphrase that resonated with me is, "We are all only temporarily able-bodied. At some point, we will all develop a disability."
Yeah,
And that's
that
something
that,
that just
that is true.
paraphrased,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that resonated. Yes.
I'll use this as a plug for my benefits team here to remind people that it's time to do your open enrollment. This actually feels like a perfect time to say, make sure that you're doing open enrollment and make sure you're taking care of your health. That's a plug. And if I'm not mistaken, I saw Jenny just gave me a thumbs up. For those people, I'll give another plug that I just saw today that there is a raffle for people who do their open enrollment within a certain period of time, and you can win some really fancy prizes that are all Jenny is giving me all kinds of thumbs up over there. Oh, there are prizes that Jenny and I are not allowed to win. Boo. But if anyone else does their benefits on time, they get randomly assigned a bunch of cool prizes. So if you have not yet done them, please do your open enrollment. I'll also give another plug to say the costs have not gone up this year. And we also have done some research on some pretty funky new apps that can help for heart health and for other things. So if you haven't done that, please make sure you do your open enrollment. You're welcome, Jenny.
Well, they have the happy dance going on right about now, so too bad we can't record that one.
Do they? You can see them.
And I have to say, good health practices are beneficial. No matter what stage you are in your life, no matter whether you have a disability or not, good health and fitness will keep us alive so much longer. And it's so, so important. And I advocate for that. And, ask your doctors questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Take notes, question them, get second opinions if you need them. But it's just important to advocate for yourself. And that's no matter where you are, whether it's in your personal life, in your medical world, it's always important to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, I just was listening to a podcast, and it was actually saying that we have rights to see rights. I don't know if that's the right word, but that we could ask our doctors to see the notes that they're taking on us.
Yes.
So we could take our own notes, but you have a doctor who might just say, this person doesn't look like they're ever going to do what I'm doing, so I'm not going to prescribe them this thing because they're never going to follow it.
Right.
So like we have every right to kind of see what our doctors are writing about us in the same way that we are taking notes too. So I'll throw that out as an alternative. All right, Anita, we're gonna lose you, but I'll invite you back.
Okay.
You take if we see more. But thank you for joining us for a few minutes for that
Oh,
little
you're
open
welcome.
plug. So Vaughn, let's talk a little bit more about technology. How has technology helped to bridge accessibility at your company? And can you give us some examples of technologies that are worth investing in or kinds of things that kinds of tools that are helping those with disabilities be able to have a more accessible experience?
Right, right. I think technology has been the key to everything. I think we learned during the pandemic how important it is to have these devices like these Zoom and WebEx calls, because that's changed the game for a lot of people with disabilities. Like before, it used to be a situation for some people with disabilities where it was harder for them to go into these office spaces. But with remote work, it's allowed them to work from anywhere around the country and the globe now, and to be able to access information digitally without having to be in a physical office space. So that one big thing has been a big game changer for a lot of people with disabilities. Also, we have these screen readers now for people that are, may have some visual impairments that helps them to, process these websites and all of that kind of technology that makes it easier for them. Closed captioning, all these technologies have really helped people. Touch screens, all of this technology was created for people with disabilities. We're using it and we're benefiting from it in the workspace, but the initial creation was all about making life easier for people with disabilities. And then voice to text technology, where you can speak what you would like to text to someone else. It really changes the game.
So if you could be an inventor, what is the thing that you keep saying, why haven't they invented? Or if they invent that, I will invest in it. Is there anything that you're like, seems like low-hanging fruit that no one is paying attention to?
Nobody has ever asked me that, but the first thing that comes to my mind is accessibility. I want to be able to push a button and a ramp just comes out. It could be stairs, but I want those stairs to disappear. I want the ramp to pop up and be right
Pop out.
there. Because one thing, and as I get older now and I'm experiencing life as an older man with a disability, is that if you are not providing me with accessibility to get into your location, I'm not coming. I'm not shopping there. I'm not spending any money. You have told me from the fact that you're not making it accessible for me that you don't want me there.
So how do you navigate? I have a friend who works for the MTA. So tell me, because I know that not all of our subway stations are accessible. Do you take the subway?
Yes, I
I know
do.
the buses you do. But not every station is accessible, is it?
No, it is not. No, it is not. But that is going to change slowly but surely. And
Yes.
thank goodness for Q Arroyo, who is he is the chief accessibility officer at MTA, and he's also a profound member.
Mm.
And he is an amazing man. He's a man who is also uses a wheelchair, and he is just making some amazing changes with MTA. And it's not just about the elevators because they're adding more elevators into locations now, but he's also about making sure that the buses, that there's those ramps that come out and everybody can use the buses. Because the thing about the bus supports the gaps. So if there's a gap, like there's trains that aren't accessible, you could always get on a bus and there's always a connection. And he is really, and now if you notice, if you ever ride the train, if you're on a train that is accessible, it will announce where the elevator is on the platform. And
Mm.
if that station is accessible, there is signage on the locations that'll tell you, okay, if this elevator is out, it'll tell you what to do. There's a QR code you can hit, and it opens up the process. So I have to give him credit because
What's his name? I'm going to mention him
his,
to my friend.
his name is Q Arroyo. I'll send you a link to him, but he's a man to know, and I would definitely recommend you inviting him next year or whenever you can. He's just doing a fantastic job with MTA. Unfortunately, a lot of the funding that was supposed to come to help with some of these
Justin
improvements
Priceton. Yep.
got lost with this congested
Justin
pricing
Priceton.
debacle. But
Yeah.
I'm sure he's going to find a way to make it work. Thank goodness for Accessoride, because when there is a station that isn't accessible in an area that I would like to visit, because I have Accessoride, I'm a member. I can just call them up and schedule my trip and go door to door for the same price of a subway card just for the trip. And a lot of people don't use these services, but there are services out here, and it makes it life livable.
I was just listening. I love NPR. I'm a huge NPR fan. Oh, I see a question, which I'll ask it in a second. But I was just listening to something around. They do like NPR on like whatever time it is I'm coming home does like a commuter update, or it's not commuter, but like the transportation update. And
Yes,
they were saying that the taxi system has a requirement that they're supposed to make all taxis completely accessible by some year, and the taxi drivers are complaining that it's really expensive to do, and the Ubers of the world are not held to the same requirements,
right.
and so they were complaining or saying like we can't afford to do this, and the Ubers of the world are not being asked to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Unfortunately, that's the downside of it, because I think that as technology changes and things are becoming more accessible, the price becomes a factor, and
yeah.
it'll be a deterrent for a lot of people. But it there is still hope, and not to give up. I'm thankful for an Uber because I remember for many years living here in New York, it was very hard for me to get a cab. But now I can just pick up my phone and schedule my Uber, and they come right to my house. And yes, I have the ability to get up out of my wheelchair, fold my wheelchair up, put it in the trunk, and get in the car. Not everybody has that capability, and but there are still vans that they provide that have the lift that you can get in. So I think that we definitely need to lean into that technology, but it's gonna slow. It takes time, and in a city as old as New York, it definitely takes time. But I've also lived in DC, and DC, all the trains are accessible in DC.
Yeah. We just live in
It's
an old system.
right,
Yeah.
and so we're stuck with an old system, but slowly but
Yeah.
surely things are going to change. But it's important to fight for these changes. When you hear about a protest happening at a train stop, for these people talking about, oh, there's no elevator or there's some kind of outage, be there, go there and fight with them, because accessibility is not just for people with disabilities. It's also, our elderly population is women with children or parents with children and trying to get in with strollers. Because I'm going to tell you, whenever I'm on a situation where the elevator is out on the platform and I need to walk up the stairs, because I've done that before, it's always a woman who will offer to help me take my wheelchair up. She could have kids with her, a stroller, and everything else, because as women, they know the journey of what it takes to manage all of these things and get through life, but they're always the first to help.
Girl power. All right, we have two questions. The first is, I think, a quick one. Are you advocating for accessible ride service vehicles? Sounds like yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then the second question is, what are some ways families can encourage elderly family members as they as they transition? Thank you, Anita. Sorry, I'm talking to Anita as she's writing me back. So let me start all over again. What are some ways family can encourage elderly family members as they transition to assistive devices while they are unhappy about it and refusing to use them, my mom included? How do you encourage and help ease them into it and help them to see the benefits of it? That's a really good question.
It is a very good question. And I'm dealing with some of this myself, just
Hmm.
because I think that what you need to do is to show them how it's going to make their lives easier. It make ease some of their pain or some of their struggle, or because one thing about it too, a lot of our older family members, there's a lot of pride in asking for help. So it might alleviate that thing to say, well, this is going to bring you independence. This is going to give you that spark. Now you can do this all yourself. You don't need somebody to help you walk up the whatever or roll around, roll instead of exhausting yourself, trying to walk somewhere. You can be a part of this experience without just being tired out, and a trip to the movies could wipe you out for a week. Whereas if you just use some kind of assistance, it would just make your life so much better.
Yeah, parents are not good listeners.
No,
They are
no.
and unlike your kids that you can make them do something, you kind of can't make your parents do something. So to the person that asks, I feel your pain, you feel the pain. It's there. That's a whole nother, that's an ERG right there,
It
is
is. It
taking care
is.
of your elderly parents. That is something I think so many of us can, and I guess we're at that big age where so many of
Yeah,
us can
we
relate to
are. And
that.
caregivers in general, they need all the love and
Yes.
support that you
Yeah.
could possibly give, whether they're caregiving for a child or an elderly parent. I think it's important to understand that that's like having another job on top of your
Yeah.
current job. So I think
Yes.
that we love on them and do anything that we can do to help support and make their lives better. But I
Yeah.
think that as far as it relates to just trying to get your people to adapt to this change, just lean in on the benefits and how it make their lives better.
Yeah.
Just do
So
that.
last question, and I think it's it's a two-part question, but it's a good one. So maybe I'm gonna ask, let me pick the question I want to ask first. So one question is just as we look to the future, what are some recommendations for enhancing workplace inclusivity for employees with disabilities, including things like adaptive languages? Like, what are some of the things that we should be kind of thinking about in order to create an environment that's truly inclusive? So that's question number one. And then my final question to you are, what are your final thoughts you can share with our listeners around self-advocacy in the workplace? So how do we make the workplace more inclusive for those with known, seen, and unseen disabilities? Are there tips that we talked about language, but are there any other things like that that are worth kind of leaving our listeners with? And lastly, you seem like you live and breathe self-advocacy. So what
Yes.
are the words that you can impart upon our employees, our colleagues around the importance of advocacy?
Okay. Well, let's start with what we can do to make it better. Look at our systems. Look at how our systems are in place, whether it comes from your hiring practices and how you interview your potential employees. Then we go to that next step about the onboarding process, and once they're in, and how we've created systems in place that will help them grow and develop as a new employee. And if they need certain accommodations, offer it to it, but ask them what they need. Make it part of the onboarding conversation, not to alienate them, because you're going to ask the same question to everybody that comes in. Because we can't make the assumption that, oh, you might need it, but you don't, because you never really know. So
Yeah.
just a broad sweep when you're asking these questions, when you're onboarding someone new, and just letting them know you have systems here in place that are there for you. Create buddy systems. In some cases, some people might need a little buddy system, because that's what we do for new employees at my company. We have people that are assigned to help onboard you in the process of being the new employee. Just talk to you about the culture, talk to you about what it takes to work there. Some people are paired with people that are closer in their age group, so they can talk about what that experience has been for them. Just so these kinds of things are good when you're talking about how to make people feel, one, welcome, and that they belong, and that that there's a process in place to help you grow in the space.
Yes. All right.
And in the
And
company.
then, so that leans into what we can do to be more inclusive, but what kind of words of advice will you share? Can you share with our employees about self-advocacy? So we talked about what we can do for our new hires. We have a ton of employees who are already here
Yes.
who probably need advocacy. So how do you help
Yeah.
them to think about their own advocacy?
I think it's about speaking up and not being afraid to speak up. A lot of times, people, you kind of get pigeonholed into what you've been doing and who you know in your process. But I think it's time, when you have a problem, that's what our managers are for. Why can't we need to build better relationships with our managers so that we can go have someone to go to, find an ally. If you're afraid to have these conversations, maybe you need to have an ally to speak for you on your behalf in certain situations. If you can't, if your manager's not going to do it. But I think that you have to learn to speak up for yourself, because if you sit there in silence and you're suffering and you're going through something and your manager doesn't know, or none of the higher ups are going to know, how are they going to know? So you have to be
Yeah.
able to tell people what's going on and let them know that you need something. And I think that, companies and managers need to create that safe space so people feel like they can have open conversation and dialogue around their needs.
Yeah. Well, I will echo everything that you say. And as I said, our theme when I started at the organization is creating an environment where people feel empowered and fulfilled.
Right.
We, as my own commercial, have been working bit by bit through creating those kinds of changes in the organization. And I wholeheartedly acknowledge we have a long way to go, but bit by bit. And, I asked my colleagues to continue to share with us what we can do so we can think about what we can put in place today and tomorrow to try to create an environment where people feel safe,
Right.
heard, and empowered. And so it's on all of us. It's not just on me, it's not just on our managers, it's also on each of our colleagues.
Yes.
Um, so with that, Vaughn, it's been a wonderful conversation. I thank you again for your time and your candor and your words of wisdom. I look forward to hearing more about what Profound does.
Yes.
And congratulations on your award. And thank you so very much.
You're absolutely welcome. And clearly you are a company ahead of it, and you're trying to make change. And so I think you're already on the right track. It's going to
Working
happen
on it. We're working on
on the
it.
right track.
So, all right, take care.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye
bye.
bye.